Okay.
Okay. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So thank
How
you
are
so
you?
much. Thank you so much, Prof. Husna, for making time at lunchtime pula tu. Thank you so much for making time.
Baru azan.
Baru azan ya. Okay.
Baru
So
azan.
I'm gonna just embarrass you a little bit and introduce you just very briefly.
Very briefly, please don't embarrass me.
No, I'm gonna try to embarrass you all the same.
Jangan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for making time for this, auspicious session with our invited guest, Prof. Emeritus Dr. Cik Husna Azhari. Very brief introduction to Prof. Husna. She was born in Malor, Kelantan, the setting of her own short stories. She studied at a local primary school in Malor, Kelantan. Briefly at Sekolah Sultan Asmah before proceeding to TKC and then later to the UK. She graduated twice from Brunel University, UK, finishing her PhD in 1985. She was with UKM for 35 years at the Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, and she served various capacities, her last appointment being the adjunct professor in 2017. She later served as the director of College Insan University Science Islam Malaysia from 2017 to 2019. And earlier this year, in April 2021, she was conferred the Emeritus Professorship. Professor Husna considers herself a researcher in the engineering specialization, indigenous technology, and she also considers herself as a Malay Muslim woman in science and a writer of fiction in English. So she wears various hats, but this is what she says of herself. At best, a Hakawati, a bari teller of traditional Muslim societies. And she says, I am happiest writing in the proverbial loteng with a real notebook and a pen and the best Indonesian coffee by my side. So with that brief introduction, I would like to allow Prof. Husna the floor.
Thank you very
Prof,
much.
the session is yours.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Raihana. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I think Dr. Ravi as well, thank you for inviting me. He sent me a very nice formal invitation.
Thank you for agreeing.
Yes, very kind of
It's an honor. It's an honor to have you.
The honor is mine. The honor is mine. And
okay, then we'll keep calling you back.
Yeah, over there?
We'll keep calling you back then.
Yeah, okay. Today I'm supposed to speak on, I think, gender and culture themes in Malaysian stories, presumably mine, I guess. So I haven't got very nice slides compared to Prof. Ruzi, but I share them on the same. And I hope that I will provide the, how shall I say, the excitement rather than my slides. Okay, first I'll have to share the screen. I'll have to ask somebody to come and help me. Hang on, 1 minute. Tasha?
In case you have questions for Prof. Husna, any one of you, please do put it in the chat so Dr. Ravi, Dr. Mel, and I can kind of moderate. Yeah. So as Prof. Husna is presenting.
Ini PowerPoint saya dok. Your entire screen. I have to put my PowerPoint. You can see my real age now. Raihana is laughing at me.
No, I'm just saying it's nice to hear your voice. It's very clear compared to the last session we had. This one is really clear.
Yeah. Nih. PowerPoint. Tak boleh buka. Why is that?
Okay.
Share. Here we are. Nampak dah? Everybody?
Yes.
Nampak ya?
Yes.
Okay. So allow me to speak, to share some of my stories in this very, probably an hour, very short time, gender and culture in the women portrayals of Cik Husna Azhari's short stories. Okay, first I'd like to share something that I like very much. This is a quotation from an eminent writer and thinker, Professor Izutsu, deceased already. And I so love his book, Language and Magic. Has anybody read this book, Language and Magic, or any other book by this professor, very eminent, a luminary, in fact? And so he says, the magical power of language. That's why we are doing this session today, because we want to delve into the magical power of language. Its influence on the ways and thinking and acting of man, to carry an inquiry on the intimate connection between magic and speech. And why do we want to study language? Because language addresses this very basic need of men. His innate predisposition to provide symbolisms of experience. And I always say that, as Muslims, we believe that when the Prophet Adam alayhi salam was created, the first thing that was taught to him was naming, so language. And so in the ranking of knowledge, language takes the first, ranks the first. And I think the people who does ranking should probably take note of this.
Good one.
And,
can we get you to put this?
I always say this.
Can we put this on? No, sorry. Can we get this on share?
In ranking, they've got it all wrong, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Before that, can we get the slides to be on slideshow, because we can see this design ideas. I'm sure you don't want us to see that. If you could just
stop. Hi,
Bukan. I don't know whether Prof is seeing the same screen.
Prof, if you can see, there's an icon there on your bottom right that shows just a bit higher, not quite.
Slideshow.
Yeah, when you go to notes, if you see the word notes there, keep going on.
Yes.
Just keep going, moving to the right. To the right.
Right to the right.
The next one.
Next
Next
slide
one.
sorter.
The next one.
Next one.
Yeah, and then the next one after that.
This one.
Slideshow. Just click on that.
Boleh tak? Does it
Should be able to.
Langsung tak ada benda.
Okay.
Walah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Sorry to have interrupted
It's okay. The students will kata, inilah orang tua, they can't even do that. It's okay. I know other things. And I always say this, usually whenever I give talks, that the people who does ranking got it all wrong. And in terms of knowledge, I always say that language should be highest rank, and grammar particularly. Okay, Professor Isuzu, he says, we have to look at words as material beings, having souls of their own. And there is a reason why I say this, because how shall we look at the writers? How shall we have this discourse analysis of the writers? I'm going to look at them from a, how shall I say it, Quranic perspective. Okay, and I say this because I was I just realized that sharing the same book with me is a very esteemed writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature this year. Siapa tahu? Abdurrazak Gurnat. Yes? Siapa tahu? Tak tahu. Student boleh dengar tak saya cakap ni?
Yeah, he
Hello?
just won the Nobel.
Dengar.
Yes.
Dengar ya? Do you know who won the Nobel Prize for Literature this year? Abdurrazak Gurnat, right?
Yeah, it was Abdurrazak, yeah.
Abdurrazak Gurnat. And in the introduction to his chapter, analysis of his book, Paradise. The Paradise, yang menang Professor Amin Malak. wrote in his book, Muslim Narratives and the Discourse of English, of which I'm very honored to sit in one of the chapters. He wrote the Quranic paradigm and the re-narration of empire. This was way back in 2004, when I think everybody missed Abdul Razak Gurna's Paradise, and he missed being nominated for the award. So if he dared then presented Quran as a paradigm, so today I'm going to present discourse analysis of my characters, all of them lady characters, using the Muslim narrative. And I say words as material beings having souls of their own, not just in Islam, I suppose. It's, how shall I say, primordial that we look at words as material beings. Remember jumpy, pumpy, semua tu? Why do we say all the jumpies, not just the prayers? It's because we believe that words have souls of their own. Okay. How shall I go forward? Next slide.
Yes.
So I will start with a brief feminist history of mine, actually. Introduction to intellectual Islam, mine as well, knowing spare rib, and to be a believing woman in Islam. So before I present a modality of how I'm going to present this Quranic perspective, I will start from my history. Okay, everybody will laugh when I say a brief feminist history. Once upon a time when I was very young at university, I started reading Germaine Greer. I mean, all the people that I mentioned, I don't know whether if your students even have heard of them. Have they?
Don't worry about it.
Have you all heard of Germaine?
Yeah, because we'll
She was
unpack.
the first feminist, all right?
Yeah, we'll
And
unpack
wrote,
this later.
What?
We'll unpack your session in our.
All right.
in our
And she
session. Don't worry
wrote
about it.
The Female Eunuch, all right? So everybody who wanted to change the world, and particularly coming from a Muslim background, then, we were practicing Muslim, we are still practicing Muslims, but we want to go out of this presentation of Islam that is ossified, closed, and not intellectual enough. So when I was at university, in my first year at university, I started reading. I wanted to find out, about being women, being empowered. So that was my first introduction to being a feminist, so to speak. And around that same time, I think I spoke about this in my first presentation, my first seminar, invited by Dr. Raihana, I think books from Professor Shells. I also told of this story that my my venture into being a feminist started around the same time when I was introduced to intellectual Islam. That was about the same time in the 1970s when this sweep of, how shall I say, pan-Islamism was sweeping not necessarily the Muslim Ummah. I didn't know because I was not, by that time I was already in England. And the Muslim students in England then had the gift of meeting Muslim intellectuals from Egypt, from Iraq, from Iran, particularly the Ikhwan brothers. And from them, we learned that, the Islam presented to us was empowering, intellectual, a politically alive Islam, and also an Islam that is very inviting and embracing to women. And so I have to relook at my ideas about being a feminist, all right, and this intellectual Islam. So I never gave up reading Spare Rib. So again, in the 70s, you know, if you're a feminist, you read Spare Rib. You didn't read Women's Own or Cosmopolitan or anything decadent like that, which was supposed to be intellectually debilitating to the empowered women. So you read books from Virago Press, and they produced a magazine called Spare Rib. You know, that the spirit is the pun, because in Judeo-Christian and sometimes some people in the Muslim tradition as well, things that women were created from the Prophet Adam's spare rib. Yes. So then the people who were at Virago Press then produced a magazine called the Spare Rib, since we were supposed to be created from the Prophet Adam's spare rib. Of course, you know that has never been mentioned in the Quran. Okay, moving on, we have to reconcile, and I believe many of my friends will have to be reconciled. All right, we want emancipation, but we want to be feminist in that sense, yes, emancipated, but we want to be a believing woman. We want to be a practicing Muslim. We want to be in the fold of the traditional Islam. And when I say to be a believing woman in Islam, it's not that, you know, I was jumping up and down wearing hot pants before 2002. No, I was very boring and prim and proper before then. But this phrase, to be a believing woman in Islam, I coined from Professor Asma Barlas from the US, who wrote this book, To Be a Believing Woman in Islam, in 2002. And I like her phrase because that is what I believe a lot of Muslim women, practicing Muslim women, we want to be believing women in Islam, but we want to have an interpretation that is more embracing and inclusive of women. So I perhaps would like to share with you some thoughts of gender in Islam. And mostly I look at the ideas of gender in Islam, gender from an Islamic perspective, from an intellectual that I admire very much, very erudite scholarship, Professor Abdul Hakim Murad, or Professor Tim Winter, who is now the director of Muslim Cambridge, Muslim Scholars Cambridge, or Cambridge Muslims, something like that. All right, if you Google him, you'll find him. And we start with, when we want to look at the meaning of gender in Islam, we want to reclaim the meaning of gender in Islam. In spite of modernity, the Islamic gender of Islam has not been looked at in the, how shall I say it, in the spirit that should be looked at. So it remains an ideal not realized in modernity. And in spite of all the emancipation and liberty and all that, it remains limited, and I think, shall I say, submerged under the secular Western, I'm sorry to use this word, Western concept of gender, and gender that is not tied to patriarchy. Having said that, I mean, I myself wrote a few articles discussing this when couched with the Western concept of gender and feminism as being under the yoke of patriarchy. So when we look at gender in Islam, now that I am very, very old, I want to look at the meaning of gender in Islam from away from the yoke of, away from the lens. I don't want to say yoke, from the lens of a patriarchy. And unfortunately, when you talk about gender in Islam, all right, we want to talk about, I want to make a point without a ranking in value, all right? Whenever, how shall I say it? When you talk about gender, all right, in Islam and equality in Islam, there's always a ranking in value. For example, all right, when we talk about spaces, delineation of spaces of the sacred, I'm sorry that I have to use a profane, for example, in mosques, all right. If you couch it in Western perspective, they will ask you, why in the mosque women have to stay and pray at the back? That means that there is a value. If you give high value to women being at the front, then women being at the back. So then equality becomes couched in when you put a value that is not Islamic in the first place. That does not come from Islam in the first place. So, but this has not been helped by practice due to madhabic principles. For example, the allocation of space, and if you see the religious space, the sacred space in mosques, in many madhab, particularly Hanafi madhab, women are really not afforded space at all. They're not even there, all right? And this is something that not enjoyed in Islam, but due to madhab. So the ideal is to return to a situation which is not now. So to return to Islam, which is perhaps the template is not available as in a normative trend in the Muslim world. One has to return to, I wouldn't say utopia, but probably existing in sporadic places in the Muslim Ummah, to something that was real in the past, or not in the too distant past. Perhaps this, loss of spaces for women and its value has only been going on in the last 100 to 150 years. So although Islam places modality in its allocation of spaces and the loss of women's spaces in public and in private, for example, in worship, in public spaces. So before, when women had their own spaces, in public spaces where they could mingle freely and so on and so forth, due to concepts of modernity and secularization, they have lost it. Lost it in public places, lost it in their homes, due to a different lifestyle. Just now I spoke about the mosque and public spaces, and the loss of public spaces even in the is most stark in loss of the extended family. For example, the norms of the Shariatic template is only possible if you have an extended family. Without the extended family, then the Shariatic template on this small modern form family is oppressive. You have somebody not allowed to go out, living in a small room with one child, not having access to anything else is oppressive. So when feminists look at this kind of situation, it is oppressive. We say it is oppressive. So it's meaningless to put this Sharia template on a secular, modern lifestyle. So what is actually the real equality that we look for in Islam? There is only one, actually, which we care about. It is the equality in attaining spiritual honor and salvation. So I said just now, when we want to write gender in Islam, we want to look away from the lens of patriarchy, all right? Moving away from always couching everything in terms of patriarchy. And we want to rewrite women in their milieu, which I'm going to discuss. I hope I have time. It's already 1:30. And the way I do it by being, the Bari teller. Bari is a Kelantan word for story, but probably a long story. And the Hakawati. In traditional Muslim societies, there's always the Hakawati, the storyteller. So this is how I function. I'm giving voice to women. And usually the style that I write is I'm writing, I'm telling the story, but I'm also giving my opinions and by engaging in the dialogue. And this is, actually, I do it unconsciously, but somebody mentioned it a long time ago when I first started writing and publishing. I always write in the first person. So always I very, very hardly at all I always write in the person, even though when the character is male, I always say I prefer the first person. So it's always very personalized, and sometimes people say they can't distinguish between Husna and whoever is the character that I'm writing about. Okay, so I'm doing many, many things, just like the person in a Kelantan Bari teller. Now I'm telling the story, I'm engaged, sometimes I'm like the character, I'm involved in the dialogue, I'm giving all sorts of funny opinions. So I'm playing multiple role in my stories. All right. Okay, gender in Islam. What are the modalities that we are looking at? So here I have 4. First, and I think most of the Muslims and scholars of Islam too will recognize these famous modalities. We have got Maryam or Mary, mother of the Prophet Isa, Khadijah binti Khuwailid radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the mother of Fatima binti Muhammad, his daughter, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, and Aisha binti Abu Bakr. And Maryam, the lady of virtue, and sometimes some scholars say that she is a prophet as well, because Jibril spoke to her, is the epitome of virtue, which Muslims, not Muslims, and I think Christians think that it is impossible to emulate because of, she because of the characteristics of, mother of God, all right? So cannot sin because she a mother of God cannot sin. So it's completely difficult to emulate. Khadijah binti Khuwailid, picture of generosity and support and love, and she attains honor and salvation by being, the paragon of an example of generosity. And Asiya is the, not that we should condone domestic abuse, it's somebody who has great patience, although she suffers domestic abuse. Fatima binti Muhammad is somebody who forgets the world, does not love the world, forgoes the world. And she is a lady of the mother of sorrows, they called her. Great fortitude in times of adversity. On the other hand, we have got the wife of the Prophet of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha binti Abu Bakr. And Sayyidina Aisha is somebody that comes across, although she is the role of modesty as the wife of the Prophet of God, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She's active, she takes on a public role, and I think for many ladies, we sit comfortably with this modality of Aisha, being able to be a person who able to practice hijab, but also very much a scholar, a great narrator of hadith, and able to engage in a public role. I come to my ladies, all right. Today I'm going to speak on 4 ladies, Inaya or Ustaza Inaya. Her story is published in the book Melo in Perspective, published by Furada Publishing House. I will speak a little bit on Nek Mutmainah. I wrote in a story for Ali, although it is still unpublished. I wrote that in 2012, but I've sent this story to my colleagues in Singapore who says there's a dearth of stories with in a Muslim setting about Muslim characters, so they use that in as text. I think probably teaching literature in English, and then maybe 1 or 2 words about this character called Nadima. I published it in Sare, Sare, S-A-R-E, a journal published by Nanyang Technological University of Singapore in 2010. Then, as I told Raihana, most of the time I will probably be speaking a lot on the unnamed protagonist, which I published in my book, an English version, in the chapter A Third World Radical. So I have called her TWR, Third World Radical. All right. First, we come to Ustaza Inaya, and I know that Ustaza Inaya is Dr. Raihana's favorite. Okay. Ustaza Inaya actually has been reviewed by Dr. Shakila. Dr. Shakila reviewed it in 2004 at DPP, and Dr. Fadilah American, who was also from your faculty, reviewed it as well. My dear friend, Dr. Fadilah American. These 2 ladies did real justice to the direct character Inaya. I couldn't have described her better than Shakila and Fadilah, especially Fadilah. I think Fadilah probably even know a person like Inaya herself, and particularly all the characters in Ustaza Inaya. So it was also reviewed by Professor Qayyum and Professor Nur Farida. Both Professor Qayyum and Professor Qayyum is not in UIA anymore, but Professor Nur Farida is there, and Dr. Wong Sukun. Okay. I don't know if I have time to read from Dr. Shakila, but I will read from my own analysis. Okay. So Ustaza Inaya, the scion of a privileged Atas Banggul, so the Kelantanese know where Atas Banggul is, Kelantan ascendancy has been eloquently discussed and analyzed by both Fadilah American and Shakila Manan. And Ustaza Inaya appears in the eponymous chapter in Melo in Perspective. So this is my own analysis. Inaya is from solid upper class stock, who made it successfully in life due to her intelligence, qualifications, beauty, and right family background. In spite of her non-conformist views, Inaya is not a total rebel. She operates very much within the permitted boundaries of a life in a man's world, albeit in many unconventional ways. And those who have read Kessler will recognize her to be from the ascendant bourgeois class of the Atas Banggul stock. And her mother, Datin Purba, and I think Dr. Shakila made notes that Purba is a tire, fights hard for her family. Note that the fight was not for her personally, nor for her immediate family, but for Inaya's genealogy, to be considered an old Atas Banggul stock, because, her husband was not. So in the end, Datin Purba won her fight to gentrify her genealogy. I am pleased that Shakila recognized the significance of my emphasis on the profession of Datuk Cik Ye's forefathers, that of Tok Bages, hardly respectable amongst the atas Bangal stock, but more importantly, religiously frowned upon. And once upon a time, during the Kaum Muda Renaissance in Kelantan, which hunted and banned. So the tukang karuts do not elicit such a strong response, but the whole idea of being tukang karuts is one of frivolity. So the Bangul, the atas Bangul ascendancy may claim to be Islamic Burmos, using Quranic verses and permitted methods to heal, but not taint the superior place in Kelantan social structure by resorting to near blasphemic practices as found in the Kelantan social structure. By to near blasphemic practice as found in the Bageh chants of an Islamic healing of Berbageh, Makyong, and Menorah. And Ustaza Inaya was also used by Shakila as it was seen as the site for the contestation and dialogic interaction of a number of discourses, in particular that of Adat, patriarchy, Islam, feudalism, modernity, and individualism. Besides Fadila, as well as Professor Ruzi and Shakila, it has also been analyzed by Wong Suk Kun and Qayyum and Nofaida. Inaya represents a point of departure from the stereotyping of a Muslim woman who departs from the norm, but not in an overt manner. I was interviewed by Professor Qayyum actually about Inaya, so I will read what Professor Qayyum asked. Professor Qayyum says, two questions. In your story, Ustaza Inaya, Datin Purba, Inaya's mother, explains the recipe for an ideal marriage as follows. The husband must always be older and cleverer than the wife. The wife must be more beautiful, fairer, and shorter. Is this patriarchal stereotype still widely accepted and practiced within the Malaysian community? I say these kinds of values are being challenged every day. I present Datin Purba as the old god and Inaya as her challenger. Inaya is close to 58 age-wise. She is one of those born pre-Merdeka, before independence. And then Professor Qayyum asked me, why does Inaya choose to return to the veil after deciding to quit politics in disillusionment? Are you suggesting that religion and not politics is the way out for Malaysian women? So my answer is, she chose to quit party politics, but not politics. She was disillusioned with the system. I'm not very comfortable with your juxtaposition that she chose to return to the veil after she quit politics. Perhaps I should deal in depth as to why she put on the veil, but this was not directly related to quitting politics. She quit politics due to disillusionment. So the donning of the veil was taken by the Malaysian polity to be a change of direction to that of Parti Melayu Merdeka Kelantan and to one more Islamic. So this opportunity, this change of apparel was seen as a sign by the Parti Islam Fundamental as not merely a change of heart in Islamic practice, but in political inclination as well. So at that time, there was an article by Jocelyn Tan in the New Straits Times on the lawyer, the late, I won't mention her name, contested a parliamentary seat in Kota Baru under the Semangat 46, now a defunct splinter party of UMNO then. Now it doesn't exist anymore. But in coalition with the past government. How did she appear in the election banners? She appeared tudong, if there is such an English word. Right? So in UMNO, for example, if she were another clone of somebody, another politician, covering of heads is anathema. So in past coalition, not wearing one is an anathema. All right. So I've only got, I think, about 15 minutes. So I will go quickly to the last one. I cannot speak on Ma'inah and Nadima, I'm afraid. So I will just go to the third world radical. All right. So the third world radical is actually the story of 5 women. All right. Madam Third World Radical herself and her friends, Rim Mubarak, who's Iranian, Zulaikha, Fatiha, and Sakina. And except for Rim, the 4 friends are Malay Muslim Malaysians. And all four studied overseas in the UK to be exact. And after their studies returned to Malaysia, the story followed the sojourn in the UK and after. So TWR, Third World Radical, is an academic in a local university, and she is probably the leader of the gang, a big sister whom everyone looked up to from their student days, even to adulthood. So I start with Zulaikha. So one of them is called Zulaikha. TWR calls her Zuli. She's in the Emirates. She's a senior geologist with ADNOC, the oil company. And she never marries, this Zulaikha, because she says marriage is a distraction. Now, Zulaikha, is actually an intellectual clone of TWR. So if you were to read the story, you will realize that although Third World Radical says, all sorts of things, supposedly disparaging things, but actually she's talking about herself, because they're both so alike. Zuli is also an intellectual clone of TWR, except for not being married. Zuli is actually TWR twins. And she says that Zuli writes incendiary pieces which everybody will object. And I don't know, maybe I'll write one of this incendiary piece written by Zuli. Zuli writes in the editorial, and she writes, the Brigade of Allah. We are the Brigade of Allah. We are in every state, yet we are stateless. We are instantly recognized, yet we have no structures. We are feared, and yet we are no standing army. We are powerless. We have no financial might. But the powers that be fear us, fight us, and wish to obliterate us. So this is a kind of, incendiary, revolutionary pieces that Zulaikha writes in her probably night job as a Third World Radical as well. So we know of Zuli's intellectual mind from her dialogue with TWR and her space in the pervasively male-dominated space in the Emirates. And then, for example, when she spoke to, let me read one of them. She says in the dialogue. So, TWR says that when you write such things, nobody reads them. So she says, no wonder your intellectual magazine has a limited readership, Zuli. I pretended to be cross with her. Only the lady nerds read your stuff. Even then, they need 2 or 3 dictionaries to have the tiniest grasp of what is going on in that lady magazine of yours. And then Zuli says, you mean lady nerds like you? I think you need some fashion pages and things that will interest the average woman, like health and parenting, for example. And then Zuli says, you of all people should be suggesting such a thing. You who never read a woman's weekly in all the times that I knew you. How come you want me to run another woman's weekly? So that's the kind of banter that Zuli and TWR has. And then the episode of gender affront that she has to face. For example, when TWR visited Zuli in the Emirates. Okay, Zuli is the senior partner of a division commanding the signatory power of at least 40 men, 10 of whom are engineers, geologists, and such like. So I followed her into the office and sat in the waiting room. Immediately, a chai wala come in. The person, a guy who makes the tea, wipe the tables, clean, and then produce thick masala tea, my favorite drink. The chai wala was stationed in a little cubicle by the ladies, the toilet. When all the senior staff left for a meeting, I was left high and dry, masala tea less. So I went to the little cubicle where I saw Mr. Wala and I gave him orders for more of the same. He gave me a fierce look, which I could not comprehend. I never saw a drop of chai before Zuli came back. The rule was no woman could walk around the office or a professional setting ordering men about, even if it's just a chai wala. All right. So Zuli was being pressured to marry, and the impact of this refusal on her mother. Okay, no, Zuli was constantly being pressured to marry, of course, and how she managed to fob off this pressure, particularly from her mother, of course. But the funny thing is, some people say, oh, why isn't she married? Blah, blah, and we try to find all sorts of reasons. So this refusal has the most impact for her mother because the mother was, Zuli is very beautiful. The mother is also very beautiful. So it's not lacking in looks that Zuli is not married. Just like she said, marriage is a distraction. Okay, next, Sakina. So another of the friend is Sakina. Sakina, according to TWR, did what she wanted to do, what Third World Radical herself wanted to do, but chickened out. That is, when they were young, they wanted to form a political party and win an election. She admitted so in her, in the story, in her dialogue. She said, that was what I wanted to do. She said, Zuli and I, who were the Third World Radicals, we were always ready to change the world. But how come that the mild-mannered Sakina became an MP, and not only that, of course, sitting in the opposition bench? And the Third World Radical is full of affection for Sakina, amazed at how she won the election, managed a constituency and family, and how does one measure her success at managing a family, particularly her husband, by making her husband able to make her husband stay monogamous and raise a bevy of well-behaved children. So, in a Muslim society, if you're such an active person, perhaps like me, hustling to and fro, like many of you as well, you say, she really knows she's a success. And, in spite of going here and there, hustling around the world, being head of the, department or something, but she's able to make her husband stay monogamous. Okay, we better have her tips. So it was Sakina, the brave one, who has moved from the NGOs to the political leader, taking a pragmatic stance on the concept of the nation state, something that they did not subscribe to in their youth. So when they were young, they had notions of what a state, an Islamic state should be. It's not the concept of the nation state, all right? But when Sakina came back and Sakina joined politics, Sakina had to be an MP. Sakina argued with TWR, I cannot wait forever until our nation state come into being. This is now. We have to be pragmatic. I have to read now. Meanwhile, while you wait and dream, we grow old. We're not getting any younger. We're not getting any success. So I have to do that. Okay, I have to go and form my party and win elections and change the world, unlike you. But in spite of her misgivings, TWR speaks approvingly and fondly of Sakina. Okay, as for Fatiha, there is only one person who earned TWR's extreme wrath, her husband's ex-husband Sabri. To all her friends in their gang, TWR is the protective sister. And if we were to read from her account, she was such to Fatiha or Fatih. Fatih is described as the patient, long-suffering wife of Sabri, who finally managed to extricate herself from the toxic marriage when she came back to Malaysia, when she returned to Malaysia. So insofar as this Sabri is concerned, there is no redeeming feature. TWR was exceptionally unforgiving in her description. He was a miser, pretentious, and then she described that as sober, introspective, and zuhud. And they were living in the UK. This Sabri was really a miser, that they did not, he did not allow them to put on the heater. So she was living in a very cold place, and TWR called it living in an igloo of a house in the UK. was Sabri's idea of living frugally. So TWR described him as a tyrant in the UK as a student and continuing so in Malaysia, even when he was working as an engineer in Petronas. So why, what does that mean? What is the connotation of if you work as an engineer in Petronas? That means you earn a lot. So you don't have to be a miser and live as if in an igloo or whatever, like you live when you were a student in the UK, you know, eat tea biscuits and drink water from the tap. Okay, so Sabri, though, continued the policy of living frugally, manifested in Fateh as wearing pasar malam attire, wearing cheap chapal, looking like some maid, blah, blah, blah. And, but Mr. Sabri realized living this life of zuhudness, of a Sufi, was getting him nowhere in Petronas, that is. So he decided to do a lifestyle makeover, all right? Then he started going out for afternoon teas, high teas, and demanded that Fateh also does a makeover, which came too late after a life of penury. So the final straw was when they went for dinner, and there was dancing afterwards, all right? And then Fateh, of course, refused to dance. Sabri then took the hands of the lady sitting next to them and danced. So there was obviously a showdown, and this episode was the perfect excuse for Sabri to leave Fateh. Sabri blamed Fateh, of course. You never dress up, you embarrass me, blah, blah, blah. And typically, Sabri's family was not supportive of Fateh. All right. And as for TWR, her reaction to Sabri was, Sabri would never venture within my hearing distance. He did not care two hoots about my opinions, but he was afraid I would burst out with my rich vocabulary for ingrates like him when there was polite society around, particularly if the polite society was in a position to affect his career. So, of course, I think if you want to know the rich vocabulary of how TWR describes this horrible creature that she despises, you must read the story. So it is obvious to the reader how third world radical loves Fateh and despised Sabri, and she admitted it too. So I'll read how she says it as well. She says, it is very difficult for me to be impartial and tell the story straight with no embellishments. For as you will agree, we love Fateh very much, but I don't care for Sabri. Okay, what about TWR herself? As she was an academic, she was married to Ustaza, and she described to her friend Rim, when she asked Rim, how is Mahmoud? She says, Ustaza is fine, blah, blah, blah. And she says, oh, they are both very brave to take us on. So Ustaza is described as someone brave to take her on. She was one full of dreams in her youth, but much mellowed in her adult life. She bemoans the fact that she is now the ossified TWR, she says, like the ossified Brezhnevs in the Kenny Everett show. So Kenny Everett, I think probably he's not around anymore. When he had on a show, he has, they staple two shows. One was about Michael Parkinson, the interviewing somebody, and the other one was Brezhnev. So at that time, people didn't know whether Brezhnev was really alive or not. So Kenny Everett, on his shows, he will wheel out Brezhnev, and if that Brezhnev was not able to speak, they will take out another Brezhnev. But I know you don't find that funny, but I found that very funny then. So TWR thinks that she's like the ossified Brezhnev as well. Okay, out of time and out of place. And she apologizes for the passing away of the old TWR, and now she writes the eulogy of her, an ideological demise. Of her friends, she admires both Zuli and Sakina for having the courage to stay true to the idealism of the youth, whereas she, in her own estimation, has fallen short of those ideas. Although she admits that Zuli, her twin, could be dubbed as the crazy lunatic. She says, if it cancels out, then Zuli will be normal. And she does not wholly approve of Sakina's acrobatics with statehood. She admits that they had remained true to themselves. Perhaps she felt that she had been too accommodative in her dealings with the uncomprehending world, and worse, she was no better than the despised Sabri. So today, very briefly, I was not able to talk about Mutmainnah, although Mutmainnah is quite interesting because it's a very long story following, pre-independence, a lot about the election, the culture of elections in Kelantan. It's very interesting. I enjoyed writing that until the present day, but it will be too long, and Nadima as well. So, so if I had discussed about these two, Mutmainnah and Nadima, so I spoke about Inaya. So I have written actually women in two milieux, the Kelantan setting, both rural and urban. They are all educated, but they are moving in a conservative Muslim majority environment. They are married, they have families, and you see that they all have supportive spouses. Although Mutmainnah divorced in the end, but I must not tell anymore. You must read the story. And the other one is in an urban setting, most probably in the Klang Valley. And I wrote that all these 5 women, all right, in the Klang Valley, educated overseas, professional. They are in a mixed environment, but still operating in a Muslim majority space. So finally, my ladies, they are empowered, but they are believing and practicing Muslimah, like Asma Bala says. They are radicals, yes. They are high flyers. They are brave to break norms and stereotypes. I don't know why I put that way. I think I wanted to write brave, maybe. Brave to break norms and stereotypes. But most importantly, they're able to negotiate a path acceptable to family and society. So with that, thank you for being with me.
Thank you very much, Prof. The undergraduates lecture finishes at 2, but you're welcome to stay on and follow with the conversation. I'm going to open, Prof. Husna has graciously agreed to make time for Q&A despite her own schedules. So we're going to try to kind of squeeze as many questions as possible, Prof. And I'm going to get the ball rolling. If you could go back to your slide, the slide before, Cik Husna's women. The slide.
I have to go back now.
Just the arrow, Prof. If you could just go back, there is an arrow.
There must be an arrow.
In the bottom, at the bottom of the screen. Can you see
at
that?
the bottom of the screen?
There is number, slide number something, and then there is.
Okay.
Yes, brilliant.
Yep.
Okay.
CHA ladies.
Yeah. So CHA ladies. So if I could just get the discussion started. So these are your women, quote unquote, your women, right, in your story. So based on the list of criteria.
Oh, sorry.
So based on these criteria, if I could just kind of start off by asking you, who is your intended reader? Because obviously when you write these kinds of characters, you have a kind of an intended reader in mind, readers who would appreciate these empowered, believing, practicing believers. They may be radical high flyers. They may even have the courage to break norms and stereotypes. But they still do that within a kind of pathway. They negotiate the rules and regulations of the family institution, societal institution. So based on that, who is your intended reader? And plus, you're writing in English.
Yes.
Right? So if you could start that, and then after that, I'm going to open it to others to question.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, Raihana. When I first wrote, when I first published in 1993, and maybe I've told this story before, never mind, I'll repeat. 1993, somebody who came to the launching of my book at that time at Atma, he said, Husna, actually he commented on the characters of the ladies, right? Because they are empowered and having opinions, blah, blah, blah. So he said, Husna, the reason why you got away scot-free is because you wrote in English. And probably not very many people will read your story, and probably not the general public. So that was what he said. Having said that, when I asked myself, who am I writing for? You know, I wanted to write for, well, probably, I cannot say I want to write for the general public, because not many people wants to or is able or will appreciate literature in English. And if you notice, Raihana, I'm writing probably to a Muslim audience, people would say, right? To a Muslim audience. And it was very difficult for me to publish. Yeah. Without fear or favor. And when my friends suggested that I publish overseas, right? Because third world writers have already successfully published in the West, so to speak, right? So they thought that if I were to send my stories to journals, that it will be published. But there were not many. I don't think there were not many people who published about Muslim characters in a Muslim milieu, but from the Muslim perspective. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the stories, if you talk about Muslim lady characters, is always Muslim women being repressed, probably sexually repressed and culturally repressed. Hardly this empowered believing and practicing Muslim nonsense, you know. So those kind of stories then will be published. So I thought to myself, if that be the case, I will wait.
Right.
I wait for my time will come. So if you say, who do you write for? I'm going to write for the world. If they want to read it, they will read it. Otherwise, if you start thinking, oh, I'm going to write, you know, it's like pander to the journals.
Right.
Yeah? No, I do not. So that's why I published myself. And Alhamdulillah, if you notice, even in the end, I got published overseas as well. So you have to wait until the world is ready. And I think the world is ready now. So you can see Abdurazak Cornat even got a Nobel Prize in Literature. So the time is right.
Okay. If Prof would like to stop sharing, then you can see the students' faces and you can engage with them. So I'm going to open the floor to the students. So please feel free to engage with Prof Husna. Thank you. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam.
My name is Ruby, and I'm a Kelantanese woman.
Okay.
So
What a way to introduce yourself.
Yes, I think let's put that out there.
Let's put out there. Okay.
But when I read it literally, I felt like so many. You said that you wrote for an English audience, but I think a lot of the micro characters in terms of the nuances, I think people from a certain culture would get it and would grasp it. So I was actually thinking you have a very specific certain audience for this, but that is just how I took to the story. So my question is basically about the portrayal and the relationship of women in your stories. We read only two for the class, and I was wondering, because you mentioned that the women were able to find success based on a certain pathway. My question is, who constructed the pathway? Who decided on the pathway? Because what I'm seeing is, I'm imagining these very successful women to be in some sort of an arena, and then there's this very affecting sentence, nearing the end of Inaya, where people are just fighting for space. And then this space, women fighting for this very limited space. So my question for you is, who decided on this space in which women have to together? So yes, so I wonder if that is,
You know that these women, they are not empowered for nothing, all right? They have to construct their own space. And that is they have to do it very consciously from, the constructing a big space, all right, for them to move in. And something very specific like deciding who to marry, for example. And I did write in Inaya that the reason why she married her cousin, Nek Kamil Waria, because she knew that they were family and he would be supportive of her. I mean, she knew that she could have married anybody, for example, but to come up to like, when she married, when she chose Nek Kamil Waria, it's not because she's like traditional, I want to marry with my relative or something like that. It was far because she knows Nek Kamil Waria will understand her, will support her, will not constrict her. And that was the choice of, that was her choice of marrying Nek Kamil Waria. And, in our, we can't escape from the milieu when we come from. Who we marry is very important, right? Whoever, I mean, we have got the small microcosm in our homes well before we venture out in the world, right? So that must be right. And you realize that in all the ladies, the first thing they decide is who their spouses are. And the reason TWR spoke despite Sabri, and Sabri was like the example of somebody whom you should not marry. If you want to go out, and build something for yourself, you want to be empowered. Sabri is the epitome of a guy you should avoid at all costs. All right. So yes, to your answer, they do it deliberately, consciously, meticulously.
That is a great answer. Like we have to construct our own space.
Yes. And we can't like the Kelantan say menasib. Menasib ka bersedis like ambon. No, you cannot. You have to be do it yourself, construct your space, and take it, how shall I say? Take it, more than courageous, more than with courage, without complaining, knowingly, I think.
Shah, you look like you're about to ask a question. Go on then.
I'm like reflecting everything, and because I just read Maria, and then I was very intrigued by Prof. Husna giving voice to women, and then the female modalities that you mentioned just now, and then I reflected back to the ending of Maria and how her space and what do you have anything to say about the female modalities as well as the character of Maria and Chi Yam? Yeah, because yeah, it's very interesting.
Okay, all right. I did not touch on Maria sebab I felt that, and even Prof. Ruzi, I think, when I should not have entered, that was before my time, she was discussing Maria. So Maria is the story. I said, people, especially the men, likes Maria very much. And when I first wrote Maria, I felt like, menyesal pula pergi tulis Maria, tahu tak? Because the men, they don't want to move from Maria. They don't want to learn about the third world radical because it's all about emancipation and nationhood and blah, blah, blah. They just want to discuss Maria because, you know what? Maria is somebody told me, somebody from your faculty before, a guy said, Prof. Husna, you have written the ultimate male fantasy. Because you make it so, tak ada tak? it's not confrontational. It's so nice. That's the philosophy behind it. I did not take sides and blah, blah, blah. And but a feminist said to me, you are pandering to the, the traditionalists by advocating polygamy. I'm the last person to advocate polygamy. Otherwise, I would have put voice in Maria or something. And even Maria said she was not interested in getting married. The only reason why she was getting married to the Pak Imam, because she wanted to be married to a learned man. All right, and that was the reason why she agreed to the Imam, to marry the Imam. Insofar as Cik Yam is concerned, all right, we come to the psyche of, I don't know, I said, when people ask me, why did Cik Yam agree to allow the Imam to marry? And nobody could give me the question, blah, because she was a virtuous fellow, blah, blah. No, maybe it didn't come out as I intended, then I have failed. Actually, because she was not good looking.
Prof, if this might help, when I first read this decades ago, it felt like you were pandering to the male gaze. I was reading as an uninformed reader at the time, and I was like, oh my goodness, why is she pandering to the male gaze? Especially the opening page, the way Maria's hip gyrates and the way the man will be transfixed to her coming in. So they see the silhouette and they see her hip gyrating, and that's all that captivates them. And I'm thinking, why would a female writer, an intellectual, a professional, an engineer, present women in this light? Like when you wrote it, what was it that you were imagining? Like, was there something that you were trying to achieve? Because one of the things that we do in class is we debate about the author-defined social reality. So what is the social reality the author is trying to either capture or debunk or deconstruct? So what was it that you were going through at that time when you were capturing the story?
Okay, very interesting question, Rehana dear. I actually, the only thing that I was portraying was the reality. It was the reality of what captivates the men in a rural setting, and how that is in contrast to the sensibilities of the Imam. That was all. Yeah.
That's a fair answer, Prof. I mean, I'm not expecting anything, but I'm just wondering.
No, I don't have anything deep to.
No worries.
Just a reality of the portrayal of something that sensuous, all right, captivating for the men, and how the Imam then tries to fight it. That's it.
Anyone else would like to engage with Prof. Husna? You're welcome to. Prof will take another 10 more minutes of your time, Prof. Yeah.
Okay, right. No problem. Okay.
Any other questions for Prof. Husna?
Any of the undergrads?
Yeah, undergrads. Any question, Ishraf? Always full of questions.
But none for me. But none for me.
Lisa, Aimi, Salim, any question for Prof. Husna?
Are they very hungry because it's lunchtime?
We'll take a break in about 15 minutes for the master students. So just another 10 or so minutes.
Okay.
I was just wondering, Prof. Melissa here, if you've heard of the HBO series food law called Maria's Secret Recipe, because the plot and the characterization bears very strong resemblance to your short story, Maria. I shared this with Prof. Ruzi earlier, and she asked me to ask you if you knew about it.
No, I don't. I'm
Because it's
afraid.
set in Indonesia, and it's about a lady who also, a beautiful, mysterious lady that comes into town and starts a food store.
Mm-hmm.
And all the men then start gravitating towards her food, and when the women be jealous. I've shared the trailer with the master students. Actually, maybe Hannah, you can share
Yeah,
it
the
with
author probably, the person who wrote the script probably read my story.
I'm thinking
I
so.
have to,
Very likely,
I have
yes.
to get my lawyer now.
Yes, so you have to have a quick. I mean, I don't know if you
Okay, I
can watch
will.
the entire
Yes.
thing. Yeah, I'm
Because
sure you see that.
if you were to like Google Maria, you can see, and then lecturers and teachers usually ask their students to produce videos, blah
Yeah.
blah, and
Yes.
some of them are quite interesting.
Yeah,
So
we've
I
done it
don't
in
know.
our
The
class,
producer
Dr. Ravi.
probably, yep,
Yeah,
get the ideas from there.
but thank you. Dr. Ravi especially has introduced this in Malaysian narration for the past so many years, and every year it's a favorite. All your stories for undergrad students, we have also done it with our TESOL program.
Mm-hmm.
And they have thoroughly enjoyed, especially the ladies in the class have had a great opportunity to discuss issues that that are related to them in pertaining to this story. But so thank you so much. It's been such a treat listening to you and also working with your
Yes.
work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support.
I think perhaps the undergraduates actually have classes, some of
Mhm.
them. So perhaps, okay, that's still a master student. So
Okay.
one of the reasons they're being very silent could also be that.
Yes. Somebody asked me a question just now. I think I didn't quite get it.
Yes.
Maria
I'm going to read the question. This is from Donglai, our student from China. She's in China currently. And she enjoyed your short story, Maria. And this is a question. It's my great honor to listen to Prof. Husna. I'm wondering the reason of the infertility of Cik Yam when reading the story of Maria. Why have you made Cik Yam the one with the issue of bearing children?
Why? You see, normally when it is made an issue in Muslim society, right? Or is it the imam? No. No. That is beside the point. We are not going into the dynamics of who's fertile and who's infertile. But when Muslim men, when they go to the qadi or they tell the parents or they tell their wives that asking permission to marry again, it's usually infertility, which they think is the wife's problem, is always made an issue. But actually, maybe I didn't let it come across. Actually, Cik Yam, with Cik Yam and the Imam, it's not the infertility. Cik Yam agrees because she felt that she was not as beautiful as Maria. That was the reason. Maybe I should put that across more, but I thought that was subtle enough because I never, I did say, I did not make a big issue out of that infertility because that would have been accepted by the Imam. Cik Yam agreed because she felt that it's okay because she was not beautiful enough, as beautiful and as alluring as Maria. Therefore, okay.
It would be nice to know 20 years later how happy their marriage is. Maybe Maria 2.0 can be recreated, you know. Okay, a couple more minutes. Any more questions for Prof. Husna? You may write it in the chat if it's more convenient for you.
Sorry, Professor Husna, I have just a bit of question. Mostly, I find it interesting that how the idea of empowerment is different from the empowerment now. So my question is, do you think that the idea of female empowerment has changed over the course of the years? Once upon a time ago, empowerment means to be kind, like the storybooks that we're told, females are kind and they take care of one another, and we don't have any problem with it. But the idea now is that it's become such a huge issue that even in Beauty and the Beast, when they adapted the story into a movie, they changed things for Belle, right? She needed to be stronger. Like kindness wasn't enough. There was something else. And kind of developed. Females have to be stronger, have to have some sort of like strength to them. So do you think like it's the reason for this, like the change of idea is because of the media or something like that?
When I was growing up in my kampung, the things we watched were not, I never watched any of these, cartoons of princess and princesses. And yesterday when I noticed that my chuchus, my granddaughters were watching the Princess Elena or Frozen, I told the parents, why don't you let them watch this nonsense? They grew up to be people who are not empowered. I never watched this nonsense when I was growing up. Apologies to people who wrote Queen Elena. I mean, this is the 20th century, for heaven's sake. Why do you let these poor children, growing up children, 6, 7 years old, watching rubbish stuff like princesses and with tiny waists, and then going about trying to be attractive to young princes by being dashing or what have you. That's not my idea, our idea of empowerment at all. Empowerment means able to make your own decisions, able to have your space and being able to make decisions, and being kind is very much being part of that. Being kind is to be able to be kind is to be empowered.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, okay.
I really like that, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? One last question. Everybody's leaving the meeting.
Anyone else has any questions for Prof. Husna?
I have another question, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. Okay.
But this is about Maria. If you
Maria again.
Yeah,
Okay.
Maria again. Because I think all of us, to be honest, because we are in the postgraduate, I think all of us got a bit of a culture shock reading it. So I was just
shock?
Yeah, because it was so true. Because it's the reality of my parents. Because we still have a long way to go. But yeah. So when I read it, I was just telling Dr. Rai and Prof. Ruzi, I was wondering about the tone of the story, because it was, I read it, I had a shock, but then I was laughing out loud because of the way you arrange, the metaphors, the innuendos, the nuances. I wonder if you were intending to be ironic, because I read between the lines of the story some sort of a criticism towards I will just say out loud, Kelantan society, because we are very much linked to polygamy because of the border things and whatnot. I think someone asked why the first wife allowed the second wife to be taken, because if female don't, they will just cross the border and get married right there. So I was wondering, were you intending to be critical and ironic when you wrote the story? Yeah, even when after you wrote it, then you realize, oh, maybe that was what I thought.
If you realize, I was how shall I say it? Gently prodding the imam in the ribs, because what he was just attracted to Maria. I mean, Maria is a sensual lady, right? And I did say that her nasi blau wasn't very much to start with, and of course everybody's nasi blau is very much better than Maria's. And the only reason everybody goes to the kedai and had her nasi blau was because they just wanted to see her gyrating right and left, balancing the basins on her head. Yeah. But because he considers himself an imam, I must not admit that it was for that. It must be for a nobler reason. And then he started quoting Fusus al-Hikam and all that. So yes, a little.
Thank you for clearing that out for us.
Just reminded about a video.
Okay, this is a comment from one of our undergraduate students. Just reminded about a video that went viral social media about a man who married 4 women and divorced 2. The first 2 wife due to menopause, and then the second because she was not fit for the marriage. Yeah. There's a lot of tongue in cheek. I agree. There's a lot. I agree with Ruby. There's a lot of tongue in cheek in Prof. Husna's writing. Her wit comes across very much. Prof, just so you know, on the side we're having a discussion in the WhatsApp, and everyone's saying, you know, how witty you are and how sharp you are, and they're like a little bit surprised. They didn't know what to expect having read your stories, you know. So this has been a great introduction to them of you. So your personality shines through as well.
Thank you.
I think this is a good time to end this session. So I'm going to take this opportunity on behalf of Dr. Ravi, Dr. Melissa, and our 2 courses, those undergraduate students as well as the master's courses. Thank you so much for making time, Prof. Husna, for making time to sit with us. I think we need to make her an honorary professor at the humanities department, Dr. Ravi.
Yes, please.
You know, and we can kind of like.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Prof. Husna. We really appreciate this. Let's have the last word from you. What do you want to leave our students with?
Last month, 2 months ago, two ladies from UPM. I think they were studying my work, and all they were asking questions were from Maria, of course. Probably they have an assignment, or maybe they were writing a thesis about, you know, representations and usual thing, representations of Muslim women in Malaysian literature and English. And I said, why have you not read my other work? Why are you all just asking questions about Maria? Please, I've written about many other women. For example, nobody wants to read about Penghulu Malik's Judgment Day. You know, the story is about a transgender. I wrote about transgender. She's called Rose, all right? She sings in the Hillview Cabaret in Teluk Cempedak Beach. And Penghulu Malik fell in love with her, although Penghulu Malik knows that she is not a rose. She might be Roseland, you know. And it was a kind of forbidden love. But nobody has, Alhamdulillah, you all like Maria, but I would like to tell for everybody to venture beyond Maria and see the multiplicities of other roles. It could be equally interesting as well. I thank everyone for supporting my work, and I hope that you will continue to do so. I thank everyone from the faculty, which has supported my work. And it was Professor Zavia, the late Professor Zavia, and Dr. Fadila Marikan actually who gave me a break. And to them, may Allah give them much barakah, and I make dua for them in this world and the next, inshallah.
Thank you so much. On that note, I would like to also thank Dr. Ravi and Dr. Melissa and the students of the 2 courses for their time. And we will end our session here. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Walaikum salam.